All right, so I'm going to lead up to a conversation about the metaverse today, and I'm going to show some of the things that we're doing that's unique at MindGrub. We're building an office in the metaverse. But first, I want to cover the gamut of innovation that's happening in the state of Maryland. And just a little quick background, I'm the CEO of MindGrub Technologies, but I'm also the chair of the Maryland Technology Council, and you might have met Pam, who's around here as well. The Maryland Tech Council has been growing the last couple of years. We now have 4 chapters along the 95 corridor that are either being acquired or have been originated. And that was really the first phase of a growth as far as having regional presence. We want to start something in Western Maryland. We want to start something in Eastern Shore and Southern Maryland, too. That's really the next phase. If you've seen the announcement, we just had our CEO, Marty Rosendale, got to the end of his tenure. And he's going to slide over and be a consultant in bio, and we just hired Kelly Schultz to be our new CEO. So super exciting. I know she's been a huge fan of everything happening, west of the Blue Ridge, let's just say. So I'm really excited too. I happen to have a cabin pretty close the way the crow flies, just in Capon in West Virginia. So I'm happy to be here today. I'm really excited to get involved in everything that's happening out in the western area as far as technology. And I've been talking to a lot of you, and there's some extremely cool stuff that's happening. So MindGrub, we work in Baltimore. We're headquartered in Baltimore. We have about 115 in Baltimore, just under 100 nationwide, and hundreds as far as a global supply chain. But we have both the headquarters in Maryland, a physical headquarters, and then we have an office in the metaverse too, which I'll talk a little bit more about today. But we work with a number of clients, and I'm going to talk about some innovations happening around the state with some different case studies. I'm going to talk about everything from robotics and cyber through sensors, IoT, and manufacturing. So I'm going to intermix some case studies as I go through some very important innovations that's happening. So cloud computing, it's pervasive. We don't really think of it as an innovation unto itself, except there is so much happening in cloud computing these days. And that is one of the baselines. Between cloud computing and high-speed internet with 5G, those are really the marrow of what makes just an amazing IT culture. So we do a lot of mobile application development, a lot of product development, a lot of systems integration. And an example in the state of a project we worked on, Exelon Mobil, they came to us, all their operating companies, BG&E, Common, and Pico, and they wanted an app. Now, the difference with the app, before you would go to a website and you would pay your bill over probably 15 clicks or so to log in, to find your bill pay in the drop down, to add your banking information. And they wanted a really quick way to leverage the cloud as far as all the data and the technology, but then have a thin client, aka a mobile app. And so with the BG&E customer app, we built a lot of features into that: a slide to pay, a personalization so that when the power is off or when there's a storm, it goes into storm surge mode, and you know right then and there if your power is up or not. All of that is possible because the data, all the customer data, lives in the cloud, and we're able to access that with APIs. We also gamify that app. And as we lead up to the metaverse here, gamification is a really big part of how the world's going to work moving forward. I just wrote an article for Forbes that talked about gaming as a new interface. We have generations now that grew up playing 3 hours of games a day, and they might not be as engaged in traditional academics, but those games can be the interface of work in the future. They can do the last mile trucking. They can do remote surgeries. All the things that we have robotics and AI on one end controlled now can be remotely controlled. So gamification of the BG&E app, you pull the client's data, you know their energy consumption, and then you teach them ways to save energy by teaching them to lower their blinds or by setting their thermostat. And you get to engage in this character called Lumi. And then once you gain points, you get to add backgrounds and outfits, and it's a cool gamification to energy savings. So once you have data in the cloud, then you want to really focus on analyzing that data. And to analyze that data, there's a lot of systems, particularly when you get into large data. A lot of people have heard of Hadoop. And then there's a lot of dashboards, whether it's Cognos or Power BI. right? So you have a lot of cloud-based data. You can analyze that data, and that's super powerful. And the metaverse itself is going to come together. It's really the conglomerate of a lot of different technologies, which is what I'm building up to here. A quick story, I was in at CES, which is in January. You must go if you want to go to any conference. It's just inspirational. I get a lot of inspiration every year. But I remember, well before the pandemic, I remember seeing drones for the first time there, 3D printing, and the GoPro cameras. And for the first time, shortly after, when those three technologies hit the scene, then people were building infrastructures for their drones, mounting the GoPro cameras, and then all of a sudden you had 3D video, right? And 3D video is one of the foundational things for the metaverse, right? The metaverse is either digital or immersive video experiences. So needless to say, all these technologies are coming together. Once you have data, once you have thin clients, once you have the cloud, you can start doing things like clinical trials remotely. And so the patient can take the meds home. They can provide feedback. And we've done a number of applications like that. Manufacturing gets a whole new level. And these are all, again, examples in the States. Stanley Black & Decker is over in Baltimore. They say hindsight's 20/20. But prior to the pandemic, Stanley Black & Decker engaged us to essentially figure out how they can reduce their brick and mortar service centers. And so they had acquired Craftsman recently. They had DeWalt, a couple other brands, and each one had their own brick and mortar service center to take your equipment in to be repaired. And they said, we really want to reduce these. Everyone's starting to do the Amazon shipping. They're getting used to shipping from home. So prior to the pandemic, they had us build a prototype to figure out how customers could ship their parts home for repair instead of having to go to the brick and mortar, and they were able to reduce their brick and mortar by about 50% pre-pandemic, and it was a really amazing move, and not in hindsight. So another really good example. Royal Farms, I like to call it the hat trick when we get to work on a client's mobile app, kiosk, and website, and we got to do all that for Royal Farms. These things are really coming together as far as that customer experience now. So that customer experience is that you can order on the app, you can pick it up, you can get your loyalty points when you pay at the pump, right? That combined experience, and that's really where the metaverse is getting to, is being a fully immersive experience, and certainly for customers is where you're going to consider. Also, Venture Trailers, another manufacturer, now they're starting to get into the social aspects with this case study. So they wanted to start selling B2C. You're adding e-commerce now as another conversive technology here. And we made an e-commerce platform for them so they could sell directly. We worked on their marketing and their social to drive user acquisition and sales. And so now you start to get into the real world that the metaverse will eventually couple with. And there's a lot going on in robotics in the state. The more interesting thing is that they found that cobotics is really the optimal way to get work done. So robotics is essentially programming a robot, and it does a repetitive task over and over again that the human doesn't need to do. It's AI. It's starting to do trucking, autonomous vehicles. They're at like level 3, 4 with autonomy. In manufacturing, you have Industry 4.0, which is robots and data off the machines. Well, you're starting to get in manufacturing Industry 5.0, which is now cobotics. So instead of the robot doing repetitive tasks, that next level of functionality that a robot can't quite do on its own, but is still somewhat repetitive for a human to do, now a human and a robot working together is called cobotics. And there's a lot of things starting to happen in cobotics. And if you look at this curve here, with every other computing technology, whether it's storage or RAM, now the cost of robotics is coming way down. So you'll start to get to a point where robotics are inexpensive enough that we'll then get a proliferation of robotics, right? There's not a lot of robots in the room here today. Fast forward 10 years, there will be robots sitting in these seats and people remotely getting a first-person perspective of being at the conference, right? So it's just a matter of time. All right, so another quick video here about robots. These are, so you notice an interface now. They're really kind of like personal robots that humans can interface with. And you'll notice here that they work hand in hand with humans. And there's several cobotics manufacturers that are starting to pop up in the States. All right, so moving up here, MindGrub, we happen to do a couple of things with robotics, and one on the right is snacks. He delivers snacks around the office, although we're now mostly in the metaverse. And then one of our developers, Jason, made a working R2-D2. It's amazing. I mean, he uses voice recognition, and you can say certain things, and R2-D2 has some canned responses, and all the mechanics, all his lights go on, and he spins and stuff. And it was just fun with 3D printers during COVID. We couldn't really get out and about, but we could certainly sit in the office and print a lot of plastic. So anyway, artificial intelligence. This is kind of that next innovation that is, I think it's going to be the next mobile device, right? Where it's not as visual or not as like physical. I mean, kinesthetically, you can't necessarily touch it. What it's going to do as much for you as mobile devices that AI will start to do a lot of personalization of content, right? I tend to think one of my stories is I travel a lot. And I think now about the experience of flying, and it's really kind of arduous, right? Like there's a lot of innovation. You can certainly use your phone now to check in your ticket, but just where to park, where's your gate, where's the Starbucks to get your coffee, is the plane delayed, getting to the gate, figuring out where your place in line is, all of that is still very, very manual. But eventually that experience will be your AI in your pocket and your mobile device will already be talking with your car, which will be self-driving. Your car will know where the closest spot is to your coffee, and it'll just drive there and park for you. It'll handle all the e-commerce transactions. You don't need to worry about that. Then you pull up your device, and you probably have, your pods in, and it'll just tell you where to walk. If you have, at that point, a good pair of AR goggles, it'll actually just show an arrow, and you can just follow the arrow, right? When you show up at the Starbucks, it already called ahead and has your order there, and it's waiting for you, and they time it perfectly. The Starbucks may be automated at that point. I get my coffee, and I know that the plane's on time, and I know exactly when I show up with my AR goggles where my place in line is, right? All of that will become AI assisting us humans. So artificial intelligence is the next big thing, and when you start to couple that into the metaverse, you really get some powerful tools, right? So you have this intelligent agent, and right now we have machine intelligence. Where we're not right now is that we have machine consciousness. And they think maybe about 2052 is really when we'll get a little bit more of that singularity, so man and machine will come together. Machine will pass a Turing test about 2052, and then we'll really have conscious machines, which is super cool and scary. So 5G, I mentioned it earlier. We're going to have 5G and 6G and 7th generation and 8th generation, right? More broadband is really important. Network systems come together, and the metaverse is one more interface into a much larger network systems. So smart cities are starting to come up on BG&E. It used to be that the meter man walked around to your house and actually read your physical meter. Remember that? Human used to do that. Now with smart meters, some places drive by in a car and they pick up all the signals on Bluetooth. In other places, the mobile app itself of the homeowner interfaces with the smart meter and then sends the data back. Well, eventually, all these systems, IoT is going to be networked, and obviously has a lot of cyber security concerns with that too, which I know good people are working on. The Internet of Things is absolutely taking off. So there's now about 50 billion Internet of Things devices, and again, another curve here. If you keep following that curve, there's going to be hundreds of billions of internet-connected devices. We're going to have to figure out more signals. I already know. I've got a restaurant with my wife, and we're trying to add Bluetooth speakers, and forget about it. We have hardwired, and it crackles a little bit, but there's so much noise in the room with everybody's devices in there that a lot of the IoT sensors are going to need to have more bandwidth, more frequencies to work with. All right, so the potential impact is huge. It's billions of dollars from factories through offices. And just a quick video of the Industry 4.0 here.
A vision of tomorrow's manufacturing. Products finding their way independently through the production process. In intelligent factories, machines and products communicate with each other, cooperatively driving production. Raw materials and machines are interconnected within an Internet of Things. The objective, highly flexible, individualized and resource-friendly mass production. That is the vision for the fourth industrial revolution.
All right. And so we talked a little bit about IoT, but Industry 4.0, now 5.0, is very much cobotics and interfaces for humans. You're starting to see a lot of mobile devices around the plant. And some examples of kind of where devices and humans are coming together. I had mentioned Internet of Things as well as Bluetooth. Polk, another manufacturer in Baltimore, we had made some mobile applications for them that act as that interface to the radio system, so that you can stream songs in a party. Multiple people could create a combined playlist and stream it to the speaker. You know, amazing things that you can start to do now with all these technologies coming together. I'm really excited to see that augmented reality is going to, I think, start taking off here. We're starting to see a couple glasses emerge. This was an old example from McCormick to send augmented reality glasses so people could get instructions on how to cook. And McCormick could record that as a test kitchen scenario and look at how they cook and use their ingredients to then recommend, you know, additional ingredients or training around that. But augmented reality glasses are going to be amazing. To be able to get directions and wayfinding and information. Think of the wealth of information on Google Maps even, that when you walk down the street, you'll be able to get and glean off the different buildings. It's just impressive stuff. Transportation, as I mentioned, is coming together. We put transponders in an Under Armour bus system so that their employees could see when the buses were en route, just like an Uber, so they could catch the bus. So all of these things coming together creates, you know, concerns around cyber. I know there's a big cyber track here today. One of Maryland, you know, companies here that's really been taking off, Dragos, is a cyber company. We happen to have designed their website. But Dragos really focuses on enterprise utility systems and looking at any, you know, vulnerabilities and any vectors for those. It's a software company. I can't stress enough how important cyber is as these technologies really proliferate, particularly when we talked about the number of sensors. And then the last thing that's really, you know, a consideration here is the demand on the internet. So you think about the energy demand that all of these data centers will consume. It's going to be about 20% of the energy demand by 2025. So you start to get into some edge computing, and the metaverse as well is also going to have edge computing. It'll have localized servers. It'll have experiences that you can do on your own that doesn't necessarily pull from the cloud. But benefits from edge computing is that it doesn't have to send and receive so much data. Particularly mobile devices do a lot of computing. We've done some examples in Maryland. Morningstar, for instance, does off-grid power conversion. And so in that case, you have a mobile device that can interact with the power converter, get the data off there, analyze that data with some graphs, but it's all on the edge. All right. So now these things are all kind of coming together in a new interface, right? I talked about AI being the next mobile device. Well, the other next major improvement is going to be augmented and virtual reality. And there's some issues there. There's some issues with hardware. There's some issues with the cost to produce it. But as you saw from various graphs, the demand and the cost, the demand is increasing, the cost is significantly decreasing. So you're going to start to see more virtual and augmented reality experiences being created. And it'll get to a saturation point that we will get used to VR and AR as being part of our routine. I suspect it'll be more in the form of augmented reality on the day-to-day, but you will have more and more sophisticated VR systems within particularly school systems, entertainment areas. So let's get into AR and VR. One thing I want to stress, too, that I think is amazing about all this stuff coming together is the concept of digital twins, and something to think about with your business. The one example I like, and particularly since we're out here, that's a picture of WISP, by the way, is that ski slopes have to figure out how much water pressure, the size of the nozzle, the direction of the snow gun to optimize the amount of snow. And there's some mad scientist that's been doing this for years, and they know exactly how to angle it based on the predicted weather. Well, now with a digital twin in the metaverse, for instance, you can make all of those variables, the angles of the nozzles, the pressure, and the temperature, and then you can run as many wind patterns as you want against it, thousands of wind patterns daily against a replica of the mountain in the metaverse. And then from there, you know exactly how to optimize all those settings so that then you can pull from weather.com's API, and you then can automatically adjust all the guns and the pressure and the amount of water to optimize the amount of snow. So the metaverse gives you a lot of power. So it's not just what's really starting as a cool gaming interface. You have to think of it as the cloud, the data, being able to interact with that data, edge computing, right? Now broadband, 5G. You have to think of it as all these things coming together. And it's got a lot of use case. So gaming and esports, we know that one. That's huge. Entertainment as well. Entertainment normally drives the ship on things. There's going to be movies that you watch in 3D space. I mean, think about that. Think about, instead of watching a flat screen for a movie, imagine you're sitting in the movie. I mean, talk about a thriller or a scary movie, right? If someone comes up behind you, they're literally behind you, and you have to turn around and see them coming at you. I mean, who's working on that? Because that is going to be the next amazing movie, right? All right, education's huge. So I had showed you that one, when we started, that one demo about Mercy, where we taught their nurses where everything was in the crash cart. In the real world, you have to do one by one. They have to go to a fake room, and they have to have an instructor there telling them how the patient's dying, and then they have to teach them where everything is in the crash cart. In the virtual world, in the metaverse, every 20 seconds that patient dies on the gurney, and they have to physically learn which drawer to pull out to then incubate the patient, right? So it's much more cost effective to do something like that, which has a lot of muscle memory. And we've done projects for the Glaziers Union to learn how to put a window up and glaze it, right? The actual challenge is walking out on the scaffolding, right? So if you want to know if you can be a good glazier or not, right? They're not going to take you up to a high rise and, I mean, they would actually do this in the real world. They'd take you to a high rise and they'd say, step out on the scaffolding and let's see if you have the gonads, you have what it takes to glaze the windows, right? But now in VR, they can test somebody's comfort because it's a very similar, if not the same experience of standing over a ledge. And you can do a lot of simulations, weather simulations, right? Problems with the scaffolding simulations that you can do it in a safer environment in the metaverse. So education's huge. Healthcare, I showed an example there. Manufacturing, right? Like with digital twins and in your plant, making sure that you're getting the optimal use out of your equipment. The metaverse is going to be great for that. So all these examples, I'm going to show you a couple here. First, I want to talk about platforms. So, good for Mark Zuckerberg, but he coined the term metaverse, and then he renamed his company Meta. I mean, that's like a Kleenex move right there. He could have called it tissue paper, but he went Kleenex, and now we all call it the metaverse, right? Like, heck of a move there. But it's not necessarily, even though Google's called Meta now, and they did buy, actually a local legend here, right? Brendan Uribe actually was a student when I taught high school in Howard County, went to College Park for less than a year, moved to Silicon Valley and co-founded Oculus and the Oculus Rift, Maryland kid. Anyway, he donated $30 million or something. That's now the Uribe Center at College Park. But they got bought for $1 billion pre-production. Think about that. Google saw that technology and said, that's going to be hot. I want Oculus. Here's $1 billion. Don't go to market. Where we want to take it to market. And they did. And so they're coming out with some really, really cool stuff right now. Oh, sorry, that's Facebook. Facebook bought Oculus. But between Oculus and Google, some really good stuff. But so Facebook is, and sorry, it was Facebook that is Meta. I said Google. Sorry, somebody should have shouted at me. Facebook is Meta. Google is Alphabet. That's their parent company. All right, I got it straight. Anyway, with Meta, though, you see the ads. You saw Mark Zuckerberg get on and show some pretty cool stuff in VR on national television. And they have a framework for building out Metaverse, and they have the Oculus, which they bought from Brendan Uribe. That is right. But there's a number of tools to build the Metaverse. So a couple of them, Hubs is what we use for our office. Hubs is really nice. You can access the Metaverse from VR or from your mobile device or from a desktop. So our office, we just send people the link, same as Zoom, and they can click and then go into any number of meeting rooms that we have. We have one big office, and then we have satellite rooms, because it gets expensive. The more people you have in one room, the limit's kind of about 50 in Hubs before you really have to start paying like as much as you would pay for some brick and mortar. Ronde is local. Tim Train was a gamer, and he started Ronde, and I've got a screenshot from Ronde. It's an interesting platform for the Metaverse. They're creating a lot of interactives, a lot of fun meeting spaces. They have an always-up camera, so as you walk around the Metaverse, your video is always there. So that's pretty significant. Minecraft, everyone knows Minecraft is a gaming system. You can now, they went to a Java edition, and you can build experiences in Minecraft and have meeting spaces and have e-commerce and have a lot of different experiences because you can write as many plugins as you want for it. Decentraland, Sandbox, and Roadblocks are some other kind of virtual environments that now people are starting to build more kind of metaverse, so more e-commerce, more social experiences, more buildings. Here's some examples that came out of Baltimore. So these are just some local buildings. There's a lot of tours in the metaverse now. So, you know, imagine if you're unable to travel, but you still want to experience walking through Paris or Baltimore. You can certainly do that remotely now in the metaverse. Fearless, one of our friends, Fearless Sports, put their store in the metaverse. They have a lot of apparel, hoodies, and sweatpants, and so they had a VR experience they could go in. There's a lot happening in e-commerce right now. McDonald's made, this is actually really cool, McDonald's made a McDonald's in the metaverse. And the way it works is you can meet your friends there, you can sit down, you can have a meal together, you can go up, you can order everything, right? The trick is when you order in the metaverse, it interfaces with Uber Eats, and then you actually get your meal delivered to you. So say your friends are all over the nation and you're like, hey, you want to go to McDonald's together? I mean, we can come up with some cool experiences. But the shared experience and the fact that it integrates with meal delivery is super cool. So now every restaurant in the world, right, should have this, you know, dining experience, particularly those that, you know, are like the 5-star restaurants, right? Like somebody should go around and just make a online version of the same restaurant. Now the food's the issue, I guess. Right? So you got to tie a ghost kitchen. This is at Convergence. Have you heard of ghost kitchens? So ghost kitchen is like if, you know, the famous French restaurant in the north part of town can't get all the way to south side of town. You have a ghost kitchen, and they make the exact same dishes that they would in the real kitchen. They just make it in the south side of town so you can do delivery there. They're called ghost kitchens. So if you can tie a ghost kitchen with all the 5-star restaurants, then I think you really got something there. Mercy, I already showed that example that we made. This is a picture of Ronde. This was a training class that we were sitting in with our Metaverse committee, and there's an aerial view. You can pan the camera and see. But it's really cool. It has spatial audio, so when you sit in one room together, you can hear everybody in that room, and anybody outside that room can't hear you. And here's a couple other shots. We took a team photo in Ronde. You know, very cool that this is a Baltimore company building this out. And then I have, I'm not going to show it live, but This is actually a screen of our office, of our metaverse office. We have an auditorium, and so I'm sitting on the bleachers of our auditorium looking in the kind of the main amphitheater. But then off to the sides, we have a number of conference rooms, and then those conference rooms have portals into other conference rooms. And so what we do is we have links, and we assign them like any other room. We're right now integrating with Google Calendar and Zoom so that you can just pick a conference room and everybody meets in the metaverse office. You can spawn Zoom windows in there if you want to pull other people in too. So it finally gives us back that physical kind of gathering and some of the collaboration possibilities. And we're adding cool things like an avatar builder. We want to add one of the conference rooms as a rocket ship, which I imagine is going to be in big demand. But you get to book the rocket ship and you take off from the office. And then it can be 30 minutes or an hour rocket ship ride before you land again. And while you're on the rocket ship, you have a meeting, right? What's cooler than that? So like, you want to go to your client and be like, hey, why don't we like meet and go to outer space at the same time? It's hot, right? So we're thinking through, now that we have all the bones to our office and all the conference rooms built out, now we get to have some real fun. In the physical world, we built a climbing wall in our office. Now, you have to be really creative because it's actually a bouldering wall. It's about 10 feet high, but it goes, 40, 50 feet, right? You can't actually go up. But in the metaverse, we can, just have a portal that just takes you to Everest. If you're like, hey, let's go hike the step of Everest. I forget the name of, there's a famous little like challenge in the top of Everest. That could be your meeting, right? You just go to the peak of Everest, have your meeting, talk at the top, walk back down, helicopter picks you up. That's a fun meeting right there, right? Anyway, so this is what we're up to at MindGrub, and we're just having an absolute blast doing it. There are a bunch of issues with the metaverse. I talked about some issues throughout this presentation, and I want to make sure I talk about them now. Security is certainly an issue. We all know that, certain technologies like TikTok and Zoom and stuff are China-owned, and there is some security issues with that. You look at TikTok in particular, they can pull all your keystrokes. They can see what other apps you have on the phone, so they can figure out these keystrokes go with this app, right? Like, they can do that. That's a problem, right? And so there is issues in the metaverse, no different than a lot of the major issues we have with just simply mobile devices. But reputation and identity is an issue that we have with every device, so particularly in the metaverse. In some respects, it's harder to know who somebody is. In other respects, you see people using the metaverse to validate people, specifically around video and use of video in the metaverse. Security and data is certainly an issue. It's that much more data. It's that much more potentially unsecured data. We already have a lot of meetings going on that we're talking about a lot of things that, are sensitive in nature. Protecting kids, like California, for instance, is looking at passing a law to prevent kids under the age of 18 from being on social media. That's pretty progressive. But there's something to be said for how damaging social media is for our kids, right? Well, the metaverse can be that much more damaging. So really important to think about, our kids and protecting them in the metaverse. E-commerce is a challenge everywhere. We happen to work in a number of industries, and there's prominent point-of-sale systems in every industry. Well, the metaverse, too, there's new vendors popping up for point-of-sale to do safe transactions. Now with, tokens and with Bitcoin, right, you're going to start to see more virtual commerce happening that isn't potentially flowing through a traditional bank account. Laws and jurisdictions, that's a big deal because, like, in the metaverse, inclusivity is actually a big problem. The same way on social media, like, people are more inclusive and accepting of each other physically. As soon as you're online, you can hide behind a screen, people are jerks, right? I mean, just look at social conversations. It's very partisan. People just banter. They love bantering online because they can, remove themselves from it physically. Well, the metaverse is no different, right? So there's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of, inclusivity. And so that's, a major issue too. But so let's just say that, there is discrimination or, there is crimes being committed in the metaverse, right? well, then where's the laws in the jurisdiction? Is it where the server is? Is it where the people were, right? Is it where the data happened to be mid-flight when the grievance happened, right? So interesting stuff in the legal space. And then the last thing is time and space. I thought this was really interesting. So, you know, sometimes like even when I drive like Baltimore to DC, that's active driving. And for me, it's maybe a 45-minute drive, 30 to 45 minutes, but it's super active and it seems like a really, really long distance. My cabin that I mentioned in Cape Ann, driving there to here, it's about a 15-minute drive because I have to go either all the way around Cumberland side or through Berkeley Springs. But when you're going through the mountains and you're looking at all the fall colors and you're just basically holding on to the road, time goes by really quickly, right? So time and space is actually relative to the activity that you're participating in. And what they found in the metaverse is that time and space is very different than the real world. 4 hours can seem like 4 minutes in the metaverse. So you can really get immersed in it. And so there's a lot of studies out there now looking at the relativity of time and space in the metaverse. Super interesting stuff. All right, I think we got about 5 minutes left. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.